Hello Fulton Virtual students and parents. This is a quick guide to the 3 grade types that you'll see in Edgenuity. They all mean different things, are calculated different ways, but are useful in their own right. Now the Edgenuity dashboard that you'll see shows tiles for each course that you are taking. The actual grade is the only grade that can actually be seen on that dashboard tile. It's the one that's most useful and most representative of your grade throughout most of the semester, hence why that's the one we chose to show. To see all 3 of the grade types, that's overall, actual, and relative, select your course and then click on the Course Report button that's up near the top right. That will provide a detailed report on the course that includes all 3 grade types up at the top. In order to make sense of these 3 grade types, we're going to look at one scenario and look at how the grade would be calculated for that same scenario for all 3 grade types. So our scenario is right here on the screen. We have a course that has 10 assignments in it, total. We're just going to treat this as a straight average to keep things simple. We're going to assume that the student at this point has done 3 of them and has scored 100% on all 3. However, at this point in the semester, the student should actually have done 6 of them. So we have our 3 that are done there in purple, but there are 3 that should have been done but haven't been there in red. The course also has 4 more items in it. However, those are ones the student shouldn't have reached yet unless they were working ahead, because the pacing of the course hasn't gotten to them yet. Those are the 4 there in black. So 3 100%s and no scores on anything else, whether it's what the student should have gotten to, like those first 3, or not, like in the case of the last 4. First, let's look at the overall grade. The overall grade looks only at what you have completed. It completely ignores anything else, and it completely ignores pacing. Think of it as a measure of your level of understanding. How well have you done on the things that you have gotten finished so far? So in this case, we have a student who has an overall grade of 100%, because it's only counting those purple items, none of the red, none of the black. The problem is that the overall grade, while it's great for getting a sense of your level of understanding, can't be used for official progress reports or report cards of any kind. Because think about it, a student could come in, take one quiz, get a 100%, and do nothing else all semester, and the overall grade is still going to say that student has a 100%. Doesn't really make logical sense in the grand scheme of things. So for progress reports, instead, we use the second type. That's the actual grade. The actual grade does take pacing into account, but it does so in a way that uses a proportion. I'm going to describe how it really works here, and then the best way of thinking about it that's not quite as accurate, but at the same time is a little easier to get our heads around. So, the actual grade, officially, considers everything that you should have done by now. If you are ahead or on pace, it winds up being the same thing as the overall grade. But if you are behind pace, it adjusts your overall grade downward proportionally to how much you've gotten done to get your actual grade. So in this case, we have a scenario where the student should have done what's in purple and what's in red, but has only done what's in purple. The student had a 100% overall grade, but has only done half of what's expected of them. So as a result, they're going to get half of that 100% as their actual grade, which winds up being 50%. Now, this is a temporary thing because once you catch up, that downward effect is gone because you're not behind anymore. It's better to think about this realistically as a little more like if you're in a traditional class, and let's say you're absent for a few days. So now you have zeros sitting in the gradebook for things that you haven't done yet because you were out. But they're only temporary zeros because you know that you'll do the makeup work, get caught up, and those will be grades, no zeros left, you'll be fine. That's essentially what the actual grade is. It's representing the fact that you are behind, but it is a temporary thing as long as you get caught up. This is what's used for progress reports at the 6-week, 12-week, or in the case of middle schools, every 4.5-week marks. That's because it most closely resembles a classroom grade, at least when we're in the middle of a semester. However, we can't use it as the final grade in the course because that whole proportional math thing gets all wonky when you try to count in something as big as a final exam or an EOC. For that, we need the last type of grade. The last type of grade is the relative grade. Now, the relative grade is something that is great at the end of a course, but a lot of times freaks people out at the beginning of the course. That's because the relative grade is your score when compared to all of the work in the entire semester, whether you should have gotten to it yet or not. It's going to have grades included for everything you have done, but anything not done all the way through the end of the course is treated as a 0. It's going to let you see how your grade builds towards your final course grade, because you will start with an actual 0, and then as you complete items and you get scores, it's going to grow and grow and grow until eventually you get to your final course grade. It can also be used at any point in time to simply say, hey, what would my grade be right now if I just didn't do anything else at all? Because it already has grades for what you've done and zeros for anything else. That also means this is the one that has to be used for final course grades, but can't be used for progress reports. It's the relative grade that's used for final course grades because it's the number that actually has grades for everything you've done and zeros for everything else that you didn't get done because you should have completed the course by that point. It's real zeros though, not a proportion like the actual grade, so it's more accurate there at the end, once you should have done everything. We don't use it for progress reports though, because again, it looks at the entire course, and when we give out progress reports throughout the semester, you shouldn't be done with the entire course yet, unless you're working ahead, so it would be unfair to count in zeros on all these things that the system shouldn't be expecting you to get to anyway, at least not yet. So what is the relative grade for this student? Well, it's going to look at all three. The purple that is done, the red that should have been done but isn't, but also the black that shouldn't have even been done yet, and is part of the course, so it counts. In this case, the student has 3 100s and 7 zeros for a relative grade of 30%. But at this point of the semester, when only about 60% should be done, really, a 30% isn't great, but no one would expect it to already be up towards passing because not enough of the course has even gone by yet to build enough points to get there. That's why early in the semester the relative grade can tend to freak people out. It's better to wait till the end of the semester and take a look at it. The good news is that if you hit 100% completion in your course, all three of these grade numbers, overall, actual, and relative, will wind up being the exact same number, because there won't be anything behind or not done sitting there to cause the actual or relative grade to be any different than the overall, because everything will have been done. The only time we really need to turn to the relative grade specifically for a final course grade is if a student doesn't reach 100%, because then the three numbers won't be the same, and we have to use the one that's more accurate. Relative. So, to recap, the overall grade is a measure of understanding, but it only looks at what you have done, so it's not used for progress reports or the report card. The actual grade takes pacing into account, so if you are behind, it drops the grade. That's more like what you would see in a traditional classroom, but understand that the negative effect is temporary, and that is what's used for progress reports during the semester. Then the relative grade is the one that looks at the entire course all at once, with grades on what you've done and zeros on what you haven't done. It is used for the final grade in the course if you have not reached 100% completion, but if you have reached 100% completion, all three of those grade numbers will be the same anyway. I hope this has helped to explain a bit about these grade types and hasn't been too confusing. If you have any further questions though, be sure to ask your teacher.